When Beetroopers were released a few months back in Dawn of Majesty as a brand new insect world premiere archetype, people were pretty excited to try them out. We hadn't really seen a good insect deck in quite a while, and honestly, all 7 of the Beetrooper cards in Dawn of Majesty were worth playing in Beetrooper decks. And that was pretty cool because it was only the first wave of support. But even without the second wave of support, which was going to release in Burst of Destiny, people still tried out the deck, and it did manage to get a few tops here and there. So Beetroopers already looked to be a pretty promising rogue strategy, and we were very hopeful for those Burst of Destiny Wave 2 support cards. And then we got a few Burst of Destiny leaks early, and the first 2 Beetrooper cards looked pretty good. The level 8 monster was a great free special summon that recycled cards, and the spell card was like an MST that summoned a token, which was pretty good in a deck that didn't really have a lot of removal. So people were really hopeful for the other 5 cards in Burst of Destiny. But then the other 5 cards got revealed, and they were pretty disappointing if I'm being honest. For whatever reason, Konami decided to pivot this deck into a fusion deck, and I don't really understand why. The fusion monster itself isn't terrible. It has 4,000 attack, it's unaffected by card effects, but the fusion spell is absolute trash. It's basically a regular polymerization with an okay graveyard effect that can add itself back to the hand. And while that might not sound terrible on paper, you have to keep in mind that the Beetrooper fusion monster requires 4 insects to bring out. So you have to take like a -4 to summon this card with the Beetrooper fusion spell, and that obviously isn't very good. I mean, even if the fusion monster is like crazy good, that is a lot to ask of Beetrooper players. But the Beetrooper fusion monster isn't like a game-winning card, it's just a cool addition to the deck. So it's not really a good reason to play it in your Beetrooper deck because the fusion spell is so costly. That being said, Konami clearly wants us to play Beetroopers with these fusion cards, so I wanted to try and build a Beetrooper deck using them in today's video. I've been playing this deck over the past week or so, and it's alright. When you go first, it's a normal Beetrooper deck, which is still pretty good, and then when you go second, you can possibly summon the fusion monster to OTK the opponent. There are a couple cool interactions with the new cards. This deck does pretty much use all of the Burst of Destiny cards, except for the new trap card, and I think overall it's a pretty good Beetrooper deck. That being said, it's not the most competitive way to build it. I'll mention at the very end of the video some of the cards that I would swap out if I wanted to play a slightly more competitive version of Beetroopers. Overall, I think Beetroopers are worse off now than they were with Dawn of Majesty. Burst of Destiny introduced a ton of powerful cards into the game, and Beetroopers really didn't get that much better. While the new level 8 monster is fantastic, it's not enough to completely change the deck, so unfortunately I think Beetroopers are just going to stay a rogue deck for now. Maybe eventually we'll get OCG support for the deck, I'm really hoping we do, but at the moment Beetroopers are just alright, which is pretty disappointing. I think this deck had a lot of promise. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed today's deck profile. It's kind of a fun way to play a lot of the new Burst of Destiny cards in Beetroopers, and I think this deck is still fairly good. It's just not as good as it could have been. Alright, so like I said, the Beetrooper fusion monster is mainly in here for OTKing. It's not really a card that you are trying to summon on turn 1. The regular Atlas is honestly about as good as the fusion monster when you are going first, and in some cases it might even be better because it does actually put advantage on the board. So let's go through here. We have, of course, 3 copies of Beetrooper Scout Buggy, still one of the best starter cards in the deck. 3 copies of Beetrooper Scale Bomber, great extender. This version plays 3 copies of Sting Lancer. This card is very important in this deck. You want to search out a whole bunch of Beetrooper spell and trap cards. You want the counter trap, you want the field spell, you want the fusion card, I guess. So this card is really important in this version of the deck. You want to be searching on your turn, you want to be searching on your opponent's turn. I think you should play 3 copies of Sting Lancer if you really want to fusion summon the big new monster. We also play 1 copy of the Mighty Neptune. This card is nuts, I really mean that. However, it is very searchable. You can add it off of the Resonance Insect, so you only need 1 copy, but do not let that fool you. This card is really crazy, and I might even consider playing 2 copies in the non-fusion build. It is that good. We also play 1 copy of Beetrooper Assault Roller. This card is actually good enough to play in the regular Beetrooper Beetrooper deck as well. It's basically a replacement for the level 4 Doomdozer card. It's not incredible, but it is better than that, I guess. We also have 1 copy of Beetrooper Light Flapper. So basically the main combo that I found to bring out the fusion monster was that you use Invincible Atlas to special summon Sting Lancer, and then you either add the field spell or the fusion spell to your hand, whichever you don't have at that point, and then you use the Resonance Insects effect when banished to mill the Light Flapper, and then you revive the Light Flapper, add back 2 Beetroopers, and then you use the 2 Beetroopers that you added back plus the Light Flapper plus the Sting Lancer to summon the fusion monster. So at that point you'll have the fusion monster plus Invincible Atlas, and then when you go in the battle phase you can revive a big monster to maybe OTK the opponent. You can set that up on turn 2. You can even do it if you go first, because on your opponent's turn you can summon the Sting Lancer and then search the field spell, and then when your turn rolls around you can use another Sting Lancer to add the fusion spell to your hand. So it's not like impossible to bring out, but I think it's like not the most optimal combo for this deck. But if you are trying to fusion summon, I think Light Flapper is an okay card. You could also technically bring this card back with Cicada King if you can manage to pull that off, but I think usually you'll just use the field spell to bring this back. We also, of course, play the Battle Wasp engine. We did not get replacement cards for this engine. It is still very good in the deck. So 3 copies of Battle Wasp Sting the Poison, 3 copies of Pin the Bullseye, 1 copy of the Twin Bow, and 1 copy of the Debris Dragon. Yeah, these cards are solid insect monsters. I kind of hoped we were going to get some insect monsters to replace them with, or at least replace some of them, but as it stands, the support was not good enough to replace those cards, so it is what it is. We also have 3 copies of Resonance Insect, of course, probably the most broken card in the entire deck, and with the new level 8 monster, you have another good search target for this card, so it's very good. You have so many good cards to add with this insect, it's really crazy. Like, the Sting Lancer is good, the level 8 monster is good, the Doomdozer is good, a lot of good choices for Resonance Insect. 1 copy of Goki Pull and 1 copy of Killer Needle. So you can't actually pop the Barrier Statue, the Wind one, with this card, but you could still add this card and then pop a different monster and then attack over the Wind Statue. So I think Killer Needle is still the best normal monster insect to play. Not everyone agrees there, but I think it is still pretty good because, yeah, with Flundereeze in the format, a lot of people will be playing that Barrier Statue in their deck. So I think having a card that can out a different monster and then attack over the Barrier Statue, I think that is pretty good. But honestly, most of the time it doesn't really matter that it's Killer Needle. You just want to make sure you are playing a 1200 attack normal monster so that you can destroy the most amount of monsters with the Goki Pull effect. For the last monsters here, we have some utility cards. We have Doomdozer, a Kaiju, and Retaliating Sea. These cards are all pretty good. They're very searchable, so you only need 1 copy of each of them, but you definitely want them in your deck. For the spell cards, we have 3 copies of Ready Fusion. This card actually got even better, believe it or not, because Cross Sheep reviving Resonance Insect is crazy considering we now have more targets for Resonance Insect to add, so I think this card is good. I will say it again though, I keep saying it in every profile, you don't actually need this card to play the deck. You can still play like a Primitive Butterfly, or just like any other insect extender is pretty good. And then we have, for the anti-hand trap stuff, you might have noticed we're not playing Cross Out in the main deck here. We are still playing though Tactics, so we have 3 copies of that and 1 copy of Called by the Grave. You almost kind of want your opponent to hand trap you if you are trying to fusion summon. The draw 2 effect with Tactics is very good. It does give you a lot of fusion material. It's kind of like a weird situation, but yeah, that can kind of come up sometimes. And then I was going to play 3 copies of the field spell because I do feel like this is the better card to not have to search. You don't want to play 3 copies of the fusion spell, but opening the field spell is good so that you can fusion summon a bit easier. However, I think playing 1 copy of Monster Born is just better than 3 copies of Formation because Formation is a hard once per turn. Monster Born also has a number of applications that you can revive Resonance with this and trigger its effect again, so I think that this card is actually pretty good. I even considered playing it in the regular version of Beetroopers last format, but in this version where you really want to revive that level 6 monster, you want to have 3 revival cards, 2 of which are searchable. We also play 1 copy each of the Beetrooper Descent, Beetrooper Landing, and Beetrooper Flying Sting. These cards are all good. Well, Landing isn't that good, but Flying Sting and Beetrooper Descent are good cards. Landing is in there because it's the way that we fusion summon the fusion monster. It's like a rough card. This card could have been so much better. It's really disappointing, but it is what it is. It is at least searchable, I guess. So that was the main deck. For the extra deck, we have 2 copies of the new fusion monster, 4,000 attack. Wow, so crazy. So this card's fine. It's not like overpowered, like I said, but it's all right. You know, you can OTK with it. The main reason this card isn't like overpowered is because the fusion spell sucks so much, but this card when it's on the board is actually pretty good. You play 2 because technically if you don't OTK the opponent, you could theoretically add back the fusion spell to your hand to then summon another copy of it, but realistically I don't know how often that's going to happen. We also play, of course, 1 copy of the Quaggar Hercules. Yeah, especially considering how bad the Burst of Destiny support was, you don't need to buy this card to play this deck if you don't own it already. It's still a very good card in Beetroopers, but Beetroopers aren't really that great compared to the other cards in Burst of Destiny, so I don't know how necessary it is to buy this card anymore. But if you do want to play the deck, it is very good in the deck. We play 3 copies of Beetrooper Armorhorn, which honestly is kind of better now than it was before, which is kind of hard to believe because it was already very good, but the fact that Neptune can just recycle the cards you banish, I mean, that's absolutely crazy. I love Neptune, such a great card. 2 copies of Invincible Atlas, still a great card. 3 copies of Inzektor Link 2 monster. Yeah, you really want card advantage, you want recycling, so I think this card is great, especially in the fusion version where you want a lot of card advantage to be able to summon the big fusion, but even without the fusion monster, this card is still fantastic. I would probably still play 3 even if I wasn't trying to play this weird fusion combo deck. We also have 1 copy of Papillon, 1 copy of Almirage, 1 copy of Crosscheap, and finally 1 copy of number 3 Cicada King. So that's it for the Beetrooper deck that uses the fusion monster. Now what would I cut if I was playing a normal Beetrooper deck? Well, it's pretty straightforward. You don't need Beetrooper Landing, you don't need the 2nd copy of Formation, you probably don't need the Monster Reborn, honestly, and then you really don't need Light Flapper, and you probably don't need the 2nd copy of Sting Lancer. So if you are trying to play Beetroopers but you don't want to play the dumb fusion monster, these cards are all cuttable. You can just play like random cards. Galaxy Worm is a really good choice for 3 of these spots, and I think this deck was 41 cards, so you only need to find 1 more card to put in here. But overall, I think Beetroopers are still an alright deck if you don't play the fusion stuff, and even if you do play the fusion stuff, I mean, when you go first, it's still just a normal Beetrooper deck. It just has a few extra bricks. But I do think that Beetroopers are still very fun. I'll still probably play this deck on a casual level, or maybe I'll take it to like a couple locals, but yeah, it's not like the tier 1 deck that we were all hoping for with the Burst of Destiny support. Unfortunately, the Burst of Destiny cards are simply not that impactful. Let me know what you think of the Beetrooper fusion monster. Have you found any other ways to bring it out? I'd love to hear what type of combos you guys are using to summon that monster if you are in fact trying to summon it. I'll see you later though. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.